I agree with them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Costa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Posner, I realize you've been on the job for a couple months, but I'd like to get a better idea of how your Bureau of Democracy and Human Rights and Labor is set up, how you're going to make changes, if any, in terms of your operation, and then how you're going to work in conjunction with, obviously, the Secretary of State and the President as you pursue efforts to expand democratic institutions and focus on human rights, as well as the recognition of oppression when we see it, and religious freedoms as we know them to be, which clearly is different in the part of the world that we're talking about, i.e. the Middle East. First of all, tell me, what are the tools or leverage that your Bureau has to provide pressure or leverage? How would you best describe them, quickly?
Really three things. One, we are involved in the policy-making process. I think we need to be more involved in that, within the State Department and within the government. Part of our
taken over, you're going to get more involved in that policy-making process. Number two?
Number two is we're involved in reporting. We do the annual country reports on human rights and on religious freedom, et cetera, but we lay the factual predicate for the government to act, and that's really, those reports have taken on a life of their own. We need to do those well. We need to disseminate them more aggressively, make them more available in the world.
Are those reports confirmed, are utilized by any credible world agencies that...
They are. The country reports on human rights and the Religious Freedom Report are probably the most comprehensive reports produced by anybody in the world. UN, I met today with 9 European governments. They use them all the time.
What's number three?
The third issue, the third part of our operation is really a grant-making program side. We have about $80 million that's available for small grants to promote human rights and democracy. So we're able to get in and provide direct
deal
support.
With countries directly that you're involved with and
we go
helping
through
democratic
U.S.
institutions?
Yeah. We generally make grants to groups like National Democratic Institute or Freedom House or the International Republican Institute, and they make grants in conjunction.
Other organizations like the National Conference of State Legislators and others where emerging democracies are taking place. I know we've participated in that in the past.
Correct, and the ABA.
So then when you report, the second tool that you have, you issue these reports, then the next report that will be coming out on the Middle East of countries that are allies and countries that are foes, countries like Jordan and Egypt, as you noted, and Iraq, that obviously we've been heavily involved in, we will have a report on the level of not only human rights issues and potential violations, but religious freedoms and the how do you give criterias of grades? I mean, I've been familiar of the religious minorities, for example, that existed in Iraq and some of the troubles they're having and some of the assassinations that have taken place. You're going to rate those?
Actually, the two reports that you reference are a bit different, and one of the things we're trying to do is reconcile everything. The report on religious freedom that just came out last month is a predicate for the Secretary for the State Department making designations of countries of particular concern. And that's done on an annual...
Whether they be friend or foe alike.
Yeah. And so there are 7 or 8 countries that fall into that category, including in this region, Saudi Arabia and Iran. And that process is ongoing right now, and they're likely to be decisions made in the next few months on that.
So you're going to establish some new milestones that this committee, subcommittee, and others will be aware of as to when the new published reports will come out?
The report's already out. Those designations will happen in the next few months.
Okay.
The human rights, the broader human rights report is just a factual summary.
My final question before my time runs out is many of us have been concerned about, as it relates to religious freedoms and human rights, the sort of curriculum that we see taking place, whether it's out of Hamas in Palestine or whether it's in the schools of Saudi Arabia, There have been commitments by governments, those that are friends of ours, that they are going to make changes in those curriculums that preach jihad, that preach religious hatred, in essence. And what we find, or what I have found to be the case, is that oftentimes whatever comments or edicts have been issued by the leadership of those governments have fallen short from what has taken place or changed in the actual schools themselves, i.e. the curriculum. Are you going to be involved in this? Are you going to do something about this?
Yes, and in fact, this subcommittee and members of Congress have for several years raised, and we've taken on board an ongoing review process, in particular of the Saudi textbooks. And my predecessors, and I give them much credit for this, have entered into an ongoing dialogue with the Saudis about this particular subject. And some progress has been made, but I'm very mindful of this, and I think we need to be constantly vigilant, both in terms of the content and dissemination of these materials. It's clearly an important issue.
Well, as the chairman is fond of his home in New York and the great city that provides Broadway, I'm very fond of that great musical from South Pacific, that the song that talks about you have to teach to hate. And I think the teaching of hatred starts in the early years with these children. And I think that's a quick way to maybe begin to try to turn the table. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Mr. Inglis.